Hey, what's up guys? First off, I just want to say Happy New Year. It has been that long since I've uploaded a video. I hope you guys are working diligently to become smarter, stronger, faster than you were the year before. What we're doing is we're releasing a little bit of a video series here on this channel. I had the unique opportunity to sit down and chat with none other than Mark Queppet from Universal Man. He's also co-founder of the NoFap Academy. I'll leave all of that stuff, all of his links in the description below. In this series, we're talking about everything from masculinity to relationships to spirituality, religion, Christianity, all that stuff. We're putting it all on the table here in this series. So enjoy part 1 where we talk about masculinity. Also, if you'd like to see more stuff like this type of content, let me know. I will be more than happy to start bringing on more people to the show so that you have more to listen to aside from just my lovely, beautiful self. Enjoy this video and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace. Hey, what's up guys? I'm here today with Mr. Mark Queppet from Universal Man, and today we got something real special for you. Today we're just going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Now, Mark, I've known of his channel since the earlier ages of NoFap. He's actually the one who helped me a lot, whether he knows it or not, get through my addiction to pornography way back when. And so I feel like he's one of the most, in my personal opinion, underrated content creators out there. So without further ado, Mark Queppet, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really pumped to be able to meet you in person and have a bit of a conversation here about some cool stuff. It's, I'm really excited.
Yeah, totally. And so your main focus on your channel is about masculinity.
Yeah, now, like when I first started, it was really about when it was initially Sacred Sexuality Project, and it was all about living a higher expression of your sexuality. And I kind of went through, and the focus was on quitting porn and masturbation and that sort of thing. But I really wanted to expand it because I got kind of good at that work, like helping people quit porn and sort of thing, and then they would leave me because that's what I was about. So I tried to, now with Universal Man, my focus is on masculinity in general. So all the sexual stuff, that's still, a very important subset and focus, but it's more than that because, the journey doesn't end when you put down porn. In fact, I would say it really starts beginning at that point. That's when it really starts getting excited. And that's where my passion is going to be moving into the future. But I mean, the sexual component's always going to be, a part of it. Yeah, totally, totally. So this is something I've actually not specialized in, which is masculinity. I think by nature we are all masculine or feminine, but this is something that you've taken the time to actually do some digging on and some investigating for your personal life, but also to help other people out there. What does it mean to be masculine? What is masculinity? Okay, so I think it's a complex thing, and there's a lot of nuance to it, so I don't know if I'm going to get it all right, but here's the way that I look at it, is that masculinity is a set of skills and abilities that allows someone to work with, a male biology in the best way possible. Okay. So my kind of thesis is that certain kinds of personal development strategies and self-management strategies work better for someone with a male biology than a female biology. Meaning, like, as a man, you've got all this testosterone, okay? And this testosterone affects a lot of different things. It affects your brain, the way it forms. It affects how you interact with other hormones like vasopressin and adrenaline. And because of this, I think certain strategies for managing yourself as a man are different. And I see a big problem today because the focus has been primarily on the feminine. And I'm not saying that's bad. There's been a lot of issues with the men repressing women and marginalizing them. And I'm not saying that's not a thing. Yeah. But now we're at the point where we've stopped talking about what it means to be, to develop these masculine traits, develop I guess the message that I hear today is pretty much like, to be a good man, you got to become a better woman. You have to get in touch with your feminine side. Yeah. And I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I'm not of the mindset that like a man has a feminine part. A lot of people think that. They think, oh, you're a mix of masculine and feminine, and so like, your job is to try and find this balance between the two. And I can see how you look at that, but then that's kind of claiming that, a characteristic is owned by a gender,
Right.
which to me is kind of strange. I just
Right.
think that, like, you know, your job is not to be a more feminine man to become balanced. Your job is just to be a better man. It's to develop all the elements of your you know, character,
Right.
rather than just, you know, try to become more like a woman. I just don't
Yeah.
think a man's going to be successful or happy if he adopts a mode of being that is incompatible with his nature.
Yeah.
And obviously there's shades of gray and all that with, you know, genetic variation and whatnot, but that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Now, I have a couple questions. What happened to masculinity? You know, where do you think that shift was? I take my father, for example. I'm not going to talk specifically about the things he accomplished, but just looking at him as a man, I can sense that there are no men like my father. There are probably no more men like your father out there. Not that there are none, but I just feel like men just don't exist in the way that they once used to.
Sure.
And that's just a very speculative comment, but where do you think it went wrong? How do you think it went wrong? Or is it wrong to say wrong? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the way that I see it, the story as it's unfolded. I think that a lot of good stuff came from powerful, you know, classically dominant men, okay? And they basically built the modern world. They're the ones who, you know, built the nations, built the technology, that kind of stuff. But they're also responsible for a lot of the bad. So they were also responsible for a lot of the war, the oppression, the rape, the pillage, all that kind of stuff. So it's like we have had a lot of good from the masculine, a lot of bad from it. And I would say that people got sick of the bad from it. And that, you know, especially like in the women's movement and stuff like that, we became acutely aware of the problems caused by an imbalanced masculine expression. And I think the pendulum just started swinging the other way. And because of that, we've kind of thrown out the traditional masculine or become very wary of it to the point where some people are actually phobic of it. You know, it's like, it's just like an evil thing. And so where we're at now, it's like either masculinity has to evolve or it's going to be kind of phased out by I don't know if it actually can be phased out, because as soon as like shit really hits the fan, if something like really goes bad in the world, I mean, it's masculine energy is what's going to be that force that puts things back together in terms of like if there's like a nuclear fallout, there's going to be that dominant force or whatever, like in a dystopian sort of dynamic, men will always kind of, you know, win that over, because as soon as combat comes into play, it's, you know, good luck being a sensitive feminist, right? But hopefully we never have to reach that point. Barring that from happening, I think what needs to happen is that men need to learn from our mistakes, you know, the excessive uses of force, insensitivity, that sort of stuff. But, you know, embrace our strength. So it's like there's this evolution that needs to occur where you can remain very truly masculine, but, you know, avoid the abuses of the masculinity, if that makes sense.
Because as you're talking, I'm thinking, it's like we want to be masculine, but also we're in a state now where, or a world now where everything that men do is almost offensive. You know, thanks again to our classic forefathers. And so I think for me, I'm trying to understand, I guess, how is it we can be more masculine without being offensive? Or maybe I've got the wrong definition of what masculinity is. So again, I want to ask, masculinity, what does it look like in modern day society? What does it look like in today?
I think before you can really say what it looks like today, because life is so varied today. In the past, you could say masculinity was this thing because pretty much everybody led a very similar life. There was a very similar dynamic, very similar belief systems, and like each culture had its definition of masculinity, and it applied to probably the majority of the population. But now it's so varied that I think you have to look at it almost on a different layer. You have to look at masculinity on the individual level first. And so the way that I think about it is like, as a man, you have these incredibly strong passions. Passion for competition, for status, and for sex. And these things get very easily warped and manipulated by modern society. So I think that masculinity actually has to start internally. And this gets into this idea about how men need to potentially interact with themselves a little bit differently than women. And I think there needs to be a strength, a discipline, and almost an internal aggression necessary to actually master those powerful forces. And I just did a video on this on my channel where I was talking about how you kind of have, it's almost better to look at yourself instead of one person, look at yourself as two separate entities that are connected. It's like you've got this primal self, which is like your kind of emotional, sexual component, and then you've got what I would call your terminal self, which is like kind of more of your rational component. Okay. And the key is that this rational component needs to learn how to become a good leader, and so to this primal self. And so to me, masculinity is about leadership, but it's about balancing all those components that make a good leader. So on one hand, you need to be firm and dominant and know how to, put that part of you in its place. Sure. But you also need to understand it. You need to care for it. You need to have its best interests in mind. You can't rule over it like a tyrant. And this is where I see a lot of guys running into problems, is that they either let their emotional self like run free and wild, or they try to kill it. And neither way is really kind of sustainable or useful.
Right. Interesting. This is all fascinating to hear, because again, these are things that I've actually never researched or investigated in myself. I think I just accepted that I am a man and I am either this or that. But I think it goes much deeper than just the elementary understanding of masculinity. And I think that's where you kind of specialize, is kind of helping people see what it truly means to be a man in this day and age, but also not be so offensive. But also, it's more so for, have you read the book, The Way of the Superior Man?
Yeah.
Okay, that I think was one of the better books out there that helped me understand what it means to be a man for myself. And, in my personal experience, this may or may not be on or off topic, but, I think men, in the way that the Superior Man book was kind of laying out, was almost selfish in a way, needing to be selfish in order to do what we have to do to better ourselves. This is, again, I'm going to kind of go off here, but in relationships, for example, I've run into so many problems with my female counterpart simply because I truly do abide by the law that a man needs to be a man within himself. He needs to know where he's going. He needs to know what he is doing, what he's trying to accomplish. And I don't know if this is something that you've ever experienced. I think you're married, and so having the female counterpart understand that type of masculinity, understand that I'm a man on a mission. I guess what I'm trying to say is, these days I find a lot of people that I try to be in relationships with get offended very easily by the fact that I'm trying to now develop myself to be something greater than who I am when I was. Do you think that this is a problem that a lot of guys face, hurting the female counterpart's feelings or any of that type of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was like this. I was very much a pleaser. It's like I thought like the way to a woman's heart or into her pants was to do whatever she wanted, make her happy, constantly. And it was it's essentially a manipulative tactic. It's an idea of like, if I can press the right buttons, then I can get what I want from you. And it's controlling of the wrong thing. It's trying to control them, instead of controlling yourself. Right. And you're right with, there's kind of this selfishness involved, but what I always call it is a selfless selfishness, meaning like, the reason why I'm not going to put you first, because in order for me to take care of, to create the greatest good that I can in this world, I have to actually put that first, the highest pursuit of goodness. And so for me, that's what needs like a woman, I don't think wants to be the number one thing, because if she can control you, then someone else can control you, and she doesn't like that. She just doesn't want a weak man. And so your highest conception of goodness has to be your ultimate controller. And a girl has to know that they can't influence that. If your goodness says go this way, then she has to know that nothing can sway you from that. That's what's ultimately going to make her feel most safe and good with you, I think. And so like, yeah, there's definitely this, it's difficult though, because that means stepping into actually looking at what the heck does that mean for you. And that's quite a journey to try and figure out, what are my values? What do I really care about? And that can be a scary thing in today's world when there are so many, there's so many options. There's so many different ways that you can choose to live your life and order your priorities, that it can be very difficult, which is why I think it's awesome that we're doing stuff like this to help put conversation out there, so that people can at least have more food for thought about how to approach this. And
kind of circling back to the earlier question that I asked regarding where did masculinity go? What happened to masculinity? This has just been a thought of mine that I think pornography put a really big dent into masculinity. I think it suppressed a lot of manhood. I think that is one of the leading causes of, you know, I'm gonna sound a little crude here, but when I see men these days, I see pussies, you know. And I'm sorry to say. I'm not saying that I'm any different or better or worse, but like I said, I don't see that father figure that I had in my life. I see people that are compliant, people that complain, people that don't want to push themselves, people that don't want to make themselves uncomfortable to get goals, people who don't even set goals to begin with. And so the only thing that I can relate to in my life, the only thing I can track back to is that pornography is what it was that stopped me from ultimately expressing my full potential as a human being, as a man, so to speak. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? How do you think, if you think this, pornography affected men and manhood?
In like the most profound way possible.